Well, I'm sure once you saw the government statistician, you knew we were going to be talking about inflation. What are the real figures and how is it biting the ordinary Ghanaian? We'll be giving you a breakdown shortly, but inflation, just so you know, has gone up from 29.8% in June to 31.7% in July. That is about a 1.9 percentage point increment. It is the highest we've seen since 2003, almost the highest we've seen in 2 decades. But what are the drivers? What are the dynamics? What is the spread month on month? And why exactly are we even ending up here? We'll be having our guest who will join us shortly for a conversation on how we've ended up here and what the way forward is. But let's quickly take a look at what I have behind me. It has to do with July inflation compared to a year ago and compared to the previous month. So let's take a look. A year ago, we're looking at an inflationary rate of 9%. 9%. In June 2022, just a month ago, or 2 months ago, because this comes in the preceding month, we were looking at an inflationary rate of 29.8%. In July, the ante has been upped again, though not moving as speedily as before. But now we're looking at 31.7%. And when you do the math, you would notice that there's been an additional some 1.9% of an increment that has been added on. So 29.8% to 31.7%. But let's look at some further dynamics in that regard. So what are the drivers of this inflation? That is something important to look at. We can talk bread and butter issues, and we start with bread. In fact, bread is the chief component driving the latest inflationary figure at 56.1%. It means basically that your bread, which maybe you were buying for 5 cedis, now could cost you as much as twice what you were getting it for. There's also herrings, smoked herrings, amani, so to speak, which is now, experiencing an inflationary rate of 51.3%. You would also know that, as we're walking you through these figures, it's a basket of over 200 items that are used to compose the inflationary rate, which is why you're seeing this breakdown. So 56.1% for bread, 51.3% for amani, smoked herrings, and in terms of rent payment, and if you're renting like most people are, you would know exactly what I'm talking about. It has seen an inflation of 46.4%. Now that is stark, almost 50%. Next to that, bus and trotro fares. Now later when I give you the breakdown when it comes to the cost of diesel, fuel generally, and others, you would see why this month on month has been one of the chief drivers. In previous months, it has been the chief driver of inflation in the country. It now stands at 42.3%. And then tied to what we were telling you about herrings, fish generally seeing an inflationary rate jump of 32.5%. So that could also, affect your kako or momane that you get on the market. But let's move on to the next slide. And this is the breakdown I was talking about that would give further meaning to what we're talking about. So when you look at the usual drivers in terms of year-on-year inflation, you would see that for July, grapes, and this is important because at a point in time, they were not even available. And recently I had to buy some for someone who wanted grapes. That was what the person felt for. And guess what? I was purchasing it at a rather exorbitant price, 35 cedis, 40 cedis. And I was asking myself, what is going on? That, by the way, were seedless grapes. Those were seedless grapes. So grapes, that is imported food, having or experiencing a year-on-year inflation of 114.6%, 114.6%. Now that is stark. It means you could be paying, 4 times as much what you were getting it for, or at least twice as much. Then you look at diesel, and no one needs to talk too much about diesel because we've already known over the last few months how it has appreciated in price from something around 5 cedis thereabouts to 12 to 13 cedis, depending on where you are purchasing it from. And of course, it's crucial. It's factoring into the inflationary rate, because you know that if you're going to use a generator, diesel, likely, if not premix fuel, then you would also, if you're a farmer, agricultural equipment, that is what they use. And then the bus drivers, a lot of them are on diesel. So 113.5%, petrol generally 83.2%. Let's look at some other basics. Washing soap, 74.6%. So if your usual washing soap has seen an uptick in price, know that it is because of all of these. Then there is what? Coconut oil, 73.9%. Groundnut oil, 70%. You can also look at wheat flour. It is important on the back of what is happening between Russia and Ukraine. You look at it, 67.2%. And the bakers are complaining. That factors into the first slide, where bread prices have actually gone up. Let's talk about the last two components. Sunflower oil, 63%, watermelon, 62.5%. And let's take a quick look down at this breakdown, and then we shall get to our guests. So when you look at the regional inflationary rates, you would see that, interestingly, it's not the Greater Accra region that is experiencing the highest inflation. It's actually the Western region, 44.8% there. Then you look at the Central region, 41.8%, and now the Greater Accra region with 33.3%. But it's still not even close to the highest. There are other regions there, 39.7%. Things pretty good in the Ashanti region, 23.3%, though still high. Then Upper West, 33.8%. Brong, Ahafo, or the Bono area, 29.7%. We know the divisions now. Northern region, 24.3%. Upper East showing the lowest with 15.7%. And those are the dynamics. But let's get to our first guest who joins us for a conversation now. Dr. Priscilla Twumasi Bafo. She's an economist at the University of Ghana. We'll also have joining the conversation President of GUTA, Dr. Joseph Obeng, together with Mark Bedu Abwaje, Chief Executive Officer, Ghana National Chamber of Commerce, who joins me in the studio. But let me start with Dr. Priscilla Twumasi. My first question to you, inflation still going up. For you, is there any surprise at the inflationary rates that we're currently seeing, the highest since December 2003?
Good morning, and good morning to your cherished viewers. I must say that I am not surprised at the trend we find in the rate of inflation. Throughout last year till today, you find that certainly there's been a lot of issues on the global front, and also issues regarding our domestic production and all that is feeding, particularly when you look at cost of fuel, for example. You look at, for instance, the depreciation of the currency. All these have a pass-through effect on the overall price level that we see. So I am not surprised, if you ask me.
You're not surprised, but since there's been a bit of a slowdown, we've only seen a 1.9 percentage increment this time round, unlike in previous months where we've seen pretty large percentage increments. Did you expect that? Did you expect a bit of a slowdown?
So the indication of the slowdown is possibly telling us that maybe some of the policy initiatives that are being rolled out to try to tackle the rate of growth in prices is taking some effect to a large extent. And I was quite excited when you went into details, the component and the drivers of inflation. So when you look at it and you see that as a nation, if we are trying to tackle the issue of inflation by, for example, tackling it from the food angle, it could make a significant impact if we yield some results within a given period. On the issue of, for instance, we know that inflation can also be imported to a large extent. And when you look at your emphasis on the cost of grapes, for example, because of the depreciation of the cedi, you see that importers would need more cedis to import a given unit. And when you go elsewhere, prices are also rising, so they buy it at a higher price, come back and then sell it at a higher price. So there are a whole lot of dynamics that are at play. But for me, the emphasis should be on us working on the structure of the economy, getting some stability in the exchange rates, and also getting to work on trying to get domestic substitute to most of the things that are imported. And when that happens, to a large extent, we could have a hang on the rate at which the prices are rising.
You speak of local substitutes, but for some of these, like the grapes you mentioned, we don't have any substitutes. We don't cultivate them here. What are some of those items that you feel we should start weaning ourselves of? Just yesterday, at the graphic business Stanbic, engagement, breakfast meetings that they've been having, they were talking about living within our means, especially as a government on the fiscal level. But what are some of the things that you feel we can wean ourselves off and produce here to cut down on the hard currency that we have to put out there, which also clamps down on our own currency and impacts our economy?
Right. So when you look at it, yes, the grape is not produced locally. But for example, why should we be in a tropical zone with lots of options for fruits and for the average Ghanaian to develop the taste for grape, for example? So some goods are for a certain class of people, and certainly their inflation rate would be higher given that the goods are imported. So for as a country, I think that we should get back to the very simple things that we can do. We have lots of fruits, mangoes, pineapples, oranges, lots of things that we can package, we can add value to, create jobs, and also take the burden of the currency. So for example, if you ask me, I do not understand why we still to date are importing fruit juices from all over the globe. We are importing, tomato paste. So basic, simple.
Hello, Doc.
Can ease the burden of the constant demand for dollar to bring these things in. When we talk about, for example, rice importation, I know there are issues along the supply chain that is not able to give us the competitive edge to be able to produce rice at that level. But I think that we should get to work on some of these things. And consistently, the argument has always been that, yes, periodic cyclical changes, pressure on the currency and all that. It is all because the structure of the economy is significantly import dependent. And when you look at the supply of foreign currency, what are the options? Where do we earn foreign currency from? It's basically by exporting raw materials. So we send raw materials abroad. We don't get much in terms of foreign currency. And we are importing manufactured goods, very simple manufactures. We are not talking about sophisticated things like gadgets and all that. We are talking about simple manufactures that, for example, if we are serious about industrialization drive, these things should be at this point produced in Ghana and to some extent also exported for us to have some, leeway and reduce the persistent pressure that is always on the currency. That also feeds into the inflationary rates.
It's interesting that you've put all of these together. Let me just let my other guests know, Mark Bedu-Abuaje, CEO of the National Chamber of Commerce, and Dr. Joseph Obeng as well, that because of time, because Dr. Priscilla Chumesi has to attend to other matters, I'm going to focus on her briefly, maybe in the next 10 minutes or so. I just have to exhaust the issues with her, and then I'll come to you, gentlemen. We're also joined by Samson Asaki Awingobit, Executive Secretary, Importers and Exporters Association of Ghana. Mr. Awingobit, a very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, and good morning to your cherished listeners.
All right, thank you very much for joining us. Just stay and let me exhaust a few issues with Dr. Priscilla Chumesi, and then we shall take it from there. Doc, now, how much of a factor is the plummet of the CD? How much of a factor is it in terms of where we are now? We've seen the CD plummet to about 9.40 to the American greenback. We've seen it lose ground to other major currencies in the country. And then we have the other cocktail that we have to deal with, our debt situation, which the IMF says we have to work at. But others too would say that, look, Ghana is not an island. On the back of COVID-19, the Russo-Ukrainian war, and everything that has happened. In fact, they say when you look at the United States, not too long ago, their inflationary rate stood at 2%. It has jumped fourfold to 8%. And that it is a similar thing we're seeing in Ghana. 9% sometime last year. And now we're looking at, 30+%, almost fourfold. So would you subscribe to those who say this is just a reflection of what is happening, across the world? And that, mind you, if we compare ourselves to the likes of Ivory Coast and others, in the past, right from the start, our inflationary levels were high, even in the 60s and 70s. And so this is merely a spillover over the decades. Do you agree with that argument?
To a large extent, I would say that, yes, when you look at the trend globally, you see that the world has gone through a significant negative shock, and that has had a negative impact on almost all economies with rising prices and all that. So indeed, it makes us situate the discussion to say that, like you rightly indicated, Ghana is not an island. But when you look at overall general price levels, and we quote, for instance, Francophone countries, for most of the Francophone countries, the economic arrangements, because we are dealing more with our independent central bank, their economic arrangements are quite different, where their currency is strictly pegged against the franc. And so in that sense, you tend not to see the persistent fluctuations that we get in our prices compared to their economies. But to a large extent, you are asking what is the impact of, for instance, the pressure of the currency on price levels. There's something we call basically the pass-through effects. So, for example, if you are importing stuff and the item you are importing, for instance, is $100. At the beginning of the year, the $100 was about 650 Ghana cedis. Now you are talking about 920 Ghana cedis thereabout. The item still remains the same item, but it's just the medium of exchange, the cedi that you are exchanging to purchase, that has gone up. And we are also in a situation where, because of global rises in increase in prices globally, you find that now the item may be slightly above $100, about maybe 105 or 110, depending on where it's coming. So to a large extent, the volatility, the vulnerability of the cedis significantly plays a role in the inflation rates that we are seeing, because most of the items in the consumer basket, we're talking about over 29,000 items in the consumer basket. A chunk of the items in the basket are imported. And so long as they are imported, it means that we don't have control over the prices, and
which is why you were referencing that we have to be more dependent on what we cultivate here or what we manufacture here. That was the point.
Exactly. And the inflation we are also seeing, to some extent, is also as a result of challenges on the supply end. So when we are talking about the inflation, it is either from demand, where we say too much money is chasing fewer goods, or supply side where producers are not being able to produce because of challenges.
Right.
So in this scheme of things, how do you tackle it? We see that persistently, the Bank of Ghana would come up and increase the prime rate. That also has a negative effect on the shocks that are occurring on the supply side. So I believe that for us to tackle the inflation on the supply side, we need to address the major challenges that are being faced by the manufacturing sector and our industrialization drive, so that once we are able to make some progress, we could get a bit of relief from the consistent pressure that is on the economy. And also when you talk about the debt levels, because we are consistently spending beyond our means, and those spending to a large extent are not going into productive sources of the economy. You find that government budget deficit is consistently financed by borrowing, whether external or internal.
Okay.
Externally, when we go and borrow, we get some foreign exchange, and that eases the pressure on the currency. These days, with the downgrade of the economy and basically Ghana being shut out of the, of the investment
Eurobond market and all that.
You see that those flows are not coming in. When you ask over time, the issue of syndicated loans, cocoa syndicated loans, these days you find that those are not coming in because of the peculiar situation that we find the economy.
Right.
So I believe that whatever arrangements we are having with the World Bank, we need to facilitate things so that it's all about speculation and building confidence in the economy for prospective investors to know that, yes, Ghana is a safe place where they could invest, for us to get the inflow of the foreign currency to ease the burden in the short to medium term, whilst we work on the productive aspect in the medium to long term so that we don't get back to this again.
Doc, I have a bit of a compound question for you to wrap the conversation. But before I get to that, very quickly, as you spoke about not overshooting it when it comes to our own expenditure, it just came to mind, and I just want a very quick answer. The National Cathedral, $547 million that we're hoping to pump into that. It could shoot up even further. Seed money of $25 million. Looking at where we find ourselves, should we put a stop to it for now? I want a very quick answer before I wrap with the questions I have for you.
I believe that it's a very political issue.
Looks like the internet is not our friend on that.
But for me, yeah. So in that sense, it is quite.
I mean, I don't want a political answer. I want you to speak as an economist in terms of our reality.
So in terms of our reality, as an economist, I would say that we need to prioritize what are our pressing needs at the moment.
So is the National Cathedral a pressing need?
At the moment, I would not say it's a pressing need.
Okay, thank you for answering that question. So I want to wrap with you. Guta, and we have Dr. Obeng standing by. Guta has said that, look, if we don't rein in the cedis fall, it could end up at 10 cedis to the dollar or even more by end of year, which would mean that if it's at 10 cedis, you would require 1 million Ghana cedis just to get $100,000 to do business with. That is the first part of the question. And we've heard from the likes of Professor Steve Hank, who says our inflation is way higher than we are purporting it in Ghana. He has classified our cedi as a junk currency. We've seen Standard & Poor's and Fitch also downgrade us, to CCC, both of them. And now we have the situation where we're in a bit of a free fall. Steve Hank of Johns Hopkins University calls for a currency board beyond the central bank. What is your take on all of this? Do we need a separate body to deal with the free fall of the cedi, to stem the tide of its fall? Because it factors into this conversation of inflation we're having. That's the final bit for you.
I believe that whatever the arrangement is, I don't necessarily think that we need a special currency board to be able to do that. Because how do you stabilize the currency? A currency board comes in, is basically based on your reserves. There's too much demand for dollars. If you have some reserves, you pump it onto the market, and then it eases the pressure. So basically, if you do not have and you fix an artificial rate out there, the black markets would be flourishing. And you see that even up to date, you find that the quotations you get in the formal financial sector would be way lower than what you do when you are trading with other people, which are so there's a lot of shadow economy that is organized around the currency because there is a price differential. The price you get in the formal financial sector is way lower. I'm sure that when you go to the bank, they'll probably be quoting something like 8 point something to you. But when you go on the real markets to deal with the Forex Bureau and others, you might get it at a higher rate. So at this point, the issue is for the central bank to be able to have a hang on the free fall of the cedi. And how the central bank can do that is options that allows the inflow of foreign currency because the demand is certainly outstripping the supply. When you look at handles for earning foreign currency, where is it coming from? And those are the issues that needs to be explored. And when we are exploring that, we also need to keep our eyes on the persistent demand for the, the dollar. Can we explore options where policy initiatives can encourage members of GUTA to probably find alternatives of producing some of the things they import locally so that we ease the persistent pressure on the currency? So these are issues that needs to be addressed, both from the demand side and the supply side. But if you ask me, I think that an independent central bank that is managing the currency is good enough. So long as we have reserves to support it, you find that we always have control over the fluctuations in the currency.
Thank you so much, Doc, for making time for us this morning. Dr. Priscilla Twumasi, Lecturer of Economics at the University of Ghana. Do have a good day.
Thank you very much for having me. Have a lovely day yourself.
Thank you. Let's now move on to some of our other guests, and we still have Dr. Joseph Obeng online. We also have Samson Asaki Awingobit. Let me quickly bring in Samson Awingobit, and then I'll bring in Dr. Joseph Obeng before I come into the studio. Samson, so you have lamented time and again the increment in inflation. You've spoken about the falling, the spiral of the cedi. And it has proven problematic for you. Now look at the recent tide of the free fall of the cedi compounded by the inflationary rate. What would be your fundamental understanding of the situation, appreciation of the situation, and where we find ourselves currently? Please unmute, Samson.
Thank you very much. Let me say a good morning to my colleagues there and especially to my senior comrade, Dr. Obeng from GUTA. I must say that I am 100% in agreement with the professor in the US who is calling for a currency board because our Bank of Ghana Financial Committee, that is the board of directors that see to our currency, prime rate and other things is out of obsolete. They have no use again. They could not do what they're supposed to do. So
you say those at the helm of affairs at the central bank are obsolete. Yes, they are useless. Is that what you're saying?
They are obsolete. They have no use.
Dr. Ernest Addison and his crew.
They are obsolete. I'm telling you, these guys doesn't know how to manage currency and how to rationalize this current cedi depreciation. Why am I saying this? Why is it that the Bank of Ghana, just like Dr. Priscilla said, the Bank of Ghana offload forex to the commercial banks every day, every week. Is that not it? Then you go, Dr. Obeng will put his money at his bank, want to transfer to pay his ticket supplier. Then his bank manager or the trade department manager will call him and tell him to go to Alaji Atitole, go to Tudu, and they'll have it. Point is, where did they get the forex from? Where did the black market
But is it not a bit harsh? No, hold on, Samson. That is why I went back to ask you. I mean, if you say they are obsolete, outdated, useless, they are the same persons. Hold on, they are the same ones who have tweaked our policy rate, who have implemented other measures to stem the tide of the free fall of the cedi. How can you then refer to them in such terms? When
interest rate was 14.5, we were asking the Bank of Ghana to talk to Commercial Bank to reduce their interest rate to be in consonant with Bank of Ghana prime rate. Did you hear Bank of Ghana governor say anything? When in March 2020, this year, 21st of this year, 21st March 2022, when they upped their prime rate by 70%, you saw the governor of Bank of Ghana jumping to the media, telling Commercial Bank to up their interest rate. What policy are you talking about? Today, you were asked how will we do to shore up our cedi depreciation, to hold it on. We are in this country, when our oil, that we can't produce our own crude oil, we export it, isn't it? Now we export it, we sell it per our GIPC laws and whatever laws that we have in this country, including the Bank of Ghana. We've allowed these investors to keep 80% of, or even 90% of the forest in Europe, instead of those money to come back to Ghana, stay here for some time so that they can cushion our city. Because if we export, you have to bring your proceeds back home. Is that not true? Do you see the Bank of Ghana changing the policy to say, look, yes, we know the GIPC law give you this, but look at the current devaluation of our city. We strongly want to believe that if you export the crude, it's coming from Ghana, bring the proceeds back, trade with us for some time before, if you, at the end of the year, after profit after tax, then you can repatriate. We have many of them mining companies. They mine our gold here, take it out, sell it, then they bring only 5% proceeds. It's only 5% that comes back. But could you imagine if these mining companies, after sales in Europe, will bring the proceeds back home, and this forest will sit out of Bank of Ghana? Do you think our city will be depreciated in this way? That's why I said they are obsolete.
Those are words that hold on. Let me just issue this disclaimer. We dissociate ourselves from those words. Those are your choice of words. If you would like to change them, fine. But as a media entity, we cannot subscribe to the use of such words to refer to them.
Why do you want me to change them? Is it not true that the Bank of Ghana sees to the currency?
I gave you an option. I said if you wanted to change them.
Yes. When we have black market, that ought not to be carrying millions of dollars sitting in the market for Ghanaians to go there and buy dollars, carry it back at their risk, at the peril of their life, before they can then bring it back to the Commercial Bank, which the Bank of Ghana upload the dollars to. So this, if I say that they have outdated their mandate that we've given them as people of Ghana. We have given them a mandate to manage our currency. We have given them a mandate to make sure that where there are illegality, you zoom in. Was it not the Bank of Ghana that collapsed the financial institution to say that they were not doing very well? It was through the mandate Ghanaians gave them. It was the mandate, and that same mandate is still in them. Why are they holding on? Why will I go to bank, interbank, see 8 point something, then I'll put in money looking for forex to trade, then the bank manager will come back and call me and tell me to go to Alaji, who have known the professional way of handling money, but he has the forex for me to go there and buy. If I say this, you will say I should withdraw. Well, I will withdraw for the sake of your program. But the point is, I strongly believe that our Bank of Ghana is not doing what it ought to do. And they are putting the pressure on us where we are today.
Two quick ones. Make your answers very brief on this one before I move on to our other guests. On the bit about royalties, you spoke about 5% that we get from gold. Recently, we heard from Dr. Steve Mantea, formerly of the PIAC, who says that we should draw up an entirely new royalty system among 16 other suggestions he's been putting out. And he says we should be looking at getting at least 25%. Is that something you agree with? And add to that, how has the inflationary rate and the fall of the cedi impacted or put a squeeze on your members as importers and exporters in terms of the activities you engage in? A minute to answer that.
I agree with Dr. Mantea for saying that we need to relook at our laws again. I agree with him completely. That's what I was saying. That you cannot take our raw materials here out, make the huge dollars, and will not bring it back to support us for some time, but we rather bring only 5% and 10% and left the rest sitting elsewhere, then we are suffering here. Our city is rational. The other aspect is you don't need the professor or the economist are going to tell you that with the current inflation rate, it is eating into your pocket, my pocket, Mr. Obe pocket. My friend Magbodu is in your studio, right? His pocket, because we all are consumers. You go to the market today, you go to the market tomorrow, then you go and meet different prices. Today, inflation is 31.7%. It tells you that if you are carrying 1,000, your 1,000 deflated by 31%. It's even more than that. And that's why I am wholeheartedly agreeing with the professor in the state, because of his words are harsh. The way my words was harsh this morning, that you draw my attention that if I can withdraw my statement because it was too harsh to them. But we need to say a spade, call a spade. That is the fact of the matter, my brother. That is the fact of the matter. Prices of wood will continue to go up. If you look at, I issued a statement yesterday, and I said that at least this current VAT amendment that the DRA did and they implemented.
Yeah, you're talking of the standard rate and all that.
Yes, exactly. If they can do something about food, medicine, petrol, because transportation, these are necessity, very important key things.
Right.
From where the inflation is going through, we strongly believe that at least if they can exempt these areas, it will help Ghanaians. So I can tell you, my brother, we are in hard times, and we cannot continue to pamper government. I have heard that the Deputy Minister of Finance is saying that they had loans, procured some loans, and they are working around to make sure that they control the cedi depreciation. Cedi is at 9 point something. What is he talking about? You go to the commercial banks, you don't get it. Finance Ministry, don't they have oversight responsibility on Bank of Ghana? Don't Bank of Ghana have oversight responsibility on the commercial banks?
Right.
This is the challenge that we have seen. These are human-factored inflation, human-factored cedi depreciation we are seeing. Bank of Ghana is not doing what it ought to do.
Okay.
They have to sit up. They must sit up.
Right. They must sit up. The Bank of Ghana, the central bank, must sit up. That is the message, underlying message from Samson Asaki Awingobit. I do hold for me, Samson. Let me also bring in Mark Bedu Abuaje, Chief Executive Officer, Ghana National Chamber of Commerce. I'll start with you from whether you see any surprise in where the inflationary rate currently is pegged at. You can bring in the bit about the cedi, how it is impacting that. And, of course, commerce. You're also in there. Yam, for example. We are now the world's #1 exporter of yam. I don't know whether you're aware of that, but I don't know whether we're putting in place the right measures. For example, now that Dr. Chumesi, for example, is saying we need more homegrown, not just policies, but food to ensure that we are not importing so much into our country. How do you react to this from the commercial point of things?
Okay, I don't know where even to start. I've put together
I've put together quite a number of them, but start where you will.
So, as a chamber, we are not surprised with the current rate of inflation. In fact, if you take a look at the budget review, the Minister of Finance reviewed the inflationary rate from 8% to 28.5%, which means that he's expecting that at the end of the year, it will be at that level. The way inflation behaves, it doesn't come down just like that. So he was supposed to move to a point, peak before it will come down. So we were expecting that at least it will go up to maybe October, but the rate of growth will be reducing. And that's what we're experiencing now. If you look at the growth, realize that for this particular month, for that of July, it has reduced. It's
just 1.9%. Yes. I mean, I say just, but I mean, it's yes. huge in terms of the impact, but it's 1.9% yes. compared to other months.
Exactly. So it will reduce up to a point and then to peak and it will come down. That's why he projected that to be 8.5. So we are not looking at what is happening. There is no way that inflation at the end of the year will be below the 28. It may even be higher than that. So we are not actually surprised about that. But let's look at the factors that are driving.
Maybe let's start with the cedi, because Samson was speaking so passionately about that, and he feels the central bank has not done enough. What is your take?
Yeah, I don't want to go into that, but I think that it should be a collective responsibility. The central bank, they have a role to ensure that they put in place all the monetary policy measures to ensure that the stability in terms of the cedi. You and I also have a role to play to ensure that we also develop a taste of consuming the locally produced goods so that we don't continuously import. In fact, just last year, we imported 2 billion worth of just 4 food products. Rice, tomatoes, soya, and I think wheat. Of all the 4, we have 3 that we can conveniently produce in Ghana, with the exception of wheat because of the nature of our. So I find it difficult to understand why we will be importing all these things. 2 billion, which is enough. If you can get just 80% of it, the challenges we are having in terms of getting dollar-denominated bonds would have been resolved.
And even if you look at 2 other aspects that we usually expend so much on, sugar, for example, and what we could do.
Yes.
And we see Commander, in recent times we've been told about it's being revamped and everything, yet still nothing to show. And poultry, for example, look at what has happened to our poultry industry.
And we have the capacity to do that. We have to empower the private sector, the productive sector, to be able to produce what we import and also export. If we don't do that, the Bank of Ghana cannot do anything. You need the hard cash, you need the dollar. And the only way you can get the dollar is to export and then get a dollar. If you don't have it, the Bank of Ghana can do all the things, but it will not be able to stabilize the cedi because of the nature and structure of our economy. So we need to, I think we have been discussing this over and over and over again. We need to take action. It shouldn't be a lip service of we want to industrialize. What is it exactly that we have to do to ensure that we change the structure of our economy? You made mention of Commander, and I'm surprised we pumped over 35 million into Commander, and for over 6 or 7 years, we've not had even 1 cube of sugar from Commander. Why? Because
and now we're going to pump similar sums into it again.
Yes, so when you are setting up a factory, there are certain things that you need and you have to do. Proper value chain analysis to ensure that I'm getting raw material from here. These are the people I'm using. This is the market.
But we're told that was done, where we're going to source the sugar cane from within the community and all of that.
We are now crying that we don't have raw materials. Why is it that we haven't been able to produce anything? We need to interrogate these issues and find a lasting solution. Let's put politics aside. If you continue to politicize our economic development policies, we always find ourselves in this. Now it is affecting MPP, it's affecting NDC, it's affecting CPP. Everybody in Ghana is being affected. Let's come together and ensure that we put in place measures. The government, as I said, will have a role to play, you and I, and also the private sector. But I think that for us to have immediate solution to this, we should begin to empower the private sector and look at how we can change the structure.
I have a few follow-up questions for you. The taste, and you could call it an acquired taste for this or that. Some of these that I'm donning may not necessarily be produced here. Some of them from Turkey, from other parts of Europe and all of that. But maybe I'm doing this simply because of this specific show. A lot of the time you would see me in African prints. Even the African prints, a lot of them are not manufactured here. You know that for a fact. A lot of them are from China and other places. So how do we get that taste remedied? It would involve policies, systems. Exactly. If you leave the ordinary people, they will not shift from what they have come to know. That is the first aspect. Then, in dealing with the cedi, you say it's a two-pronged affair. The people themselves, and of course, that also feeds into our foreign appetite. And then, the central bank itself, or governance systems. But you would agree with me that it behoves more on the central bank, which is supposed to monitor or manage our monetary affairs. So I'll go back to the question, has the central bank done enough? Because you don't expect the ordinary Ghanaian. The ordinary Ghanaian, through push and pull factors, does not determine where the cedi goes. It is the central bank that has to regulate, and government, by extension, that has to determine, maybe like the Nigerians have done. Rice, we're going to reduce our component, grow a lot here, and maybe if you're going to import rice, the taxes on it are going to be this high to encourage people. I mean, that goes without saying, doesn't it?
Yes, I agree with you. I think they have to do more. I'll give you a typical example. If you go to South Africa, you can't just walk to the black market and say you are changing $1. The processes that you have to go through, they monitor every dollar that enters the economy and that leaves the economy. By so doing, you'll be able to know what we have so that you shut down basically or reduce the effect of the black market. In Ghana, dollar is just like anything on the market. And you can't manage your currency like that, where people have access to it. So if he goes to the bank and the bank says, I don't have it, he can get it somewhere at a higher rate. Once he needs a dollar, he will go. That's where there are a lot of speculation in the system. Because people are now cashing in on that arbitrarily. They just go, they buy it, and then they keep it. And then when somebody needs it, they sell it at a high. But once you need it, you pay for it. So they have to do more to ensure that they bring some sanity within the forest market. How are they monitoring the forest bureaus? To a large extent, even they have a way of, but the person that are largely over there, and mind you, they keep a chunk of our dollar, and they're able to dictate the pace of the price of the dollar. What the central bank...
When the black market shouldn't even be in business.
Exactly.
It's illegal.
It's illegal. What is the central bank doing about it?
You know, there's a popular spot. I always make reference to it. I will not mention the police station, but you know there's a police station here in Accra. And right next to the police station, there are black market people operating.
So what is the police
and doing? It's illegal, but right next to them. In fact, when you go there, you see them rushing on.
And I think it also has to do with a lot of education. Find out if the policeman is aware of what they are doing.
How can a police officer not be aware?
No, he's a police officer. There's a possibility that he knows there's a black man. Does he know that it's illegal? These are things that I think the central bank should come out to educate everybody, so that even when you see that, you should be able to at least alert the police that what is going on there is illegal, and they have to act on that. So for me, it wouldn't be, but there's a huge responsibility on the government, both the monetary policy sector and then the fiscal policy sector. In fact, if the central bank decides to do all the things that we are asking for, and from the Ministry of Finance, the fiscal sector is not working, we'll still find ourselves in this situation. Okay. So there should be a collaborative and synergy between the monetary policies and the fiscal policy before we'll be able to achieve the stability that we are asking for. And of course, inflation, for me, it doesn't help anybody. For businesses, one of the things that we've been asking for is stability in the economy, so that we'll be able to predict. That is very key. Predictability is very key. Now we don't have it. Confidence is low. And when inflation goes up, the pass-through effect, almost everything. Monitor the growth of the PPI, the Producer Price Index. It increases more than the growth of the CPI. At the moment...
Consumer Price Index.
Yes, the consumer price. At the moment, as of June, it was 38%, which means that on average, your cost of production is 38%, excluding any other thing. Now, that is how much you are paying for. And businesses...
Which definitely means that there's going to be a rollover passing on to the consumer.
Exactly. So businesses now, what we are doing is to ensure that we are just in operation. So either we are...
You're breaking even.
You're breaking even, or you are reducing your profit margin. Others are also ensuring that they are just even keeping their customers and themselves in business. They might not necessarily be breaking even because of the challenges, but because I don't want to lose my customers, because I have a business to protect, let me just suffer from this bit of losses for now to ensure that when things get better.
So some of your members are actually incurring losses.
Oh, yes.
Losses.
Exactly.
But they just stay in business because this is my customer pool. I don't want to lose
Exactly.
them.
But how long how long can you stay in a loss? Consistently, you run down your business because the bank manager is chasing you for the loan.
The loan and all of that.
And interest rate is up.
It's interesting, the picture you paint. It's pretty dire. It's worrying because we've had a lot of people. Just yesterday, interestingly, I was speaking to someone who supplies toiletries. And she was telling me about one customer where she has to increase the prices, but she can't because the person keeps telling her, look, maybe you can just retain the 10 pesos that you get on each one, when she could have gone for 40 or 50 pesos in terms of what her profit would be. But she has to keep it there just to keep that customer. So it resonates with what you're saying. But let me bring in Dr. Joseph Obeng. Now, Guta, recently, you've been complaining a lot about the free fall of the cedi. And now we are talking rising inflation. Again, 31.7% this time. Is it crunch time for the central bank and the executive especially to maybe adopt other measures before we get the 3 billion from the IMF that we want now to shore up our economy? Is it crunch time?
Yeah, I agree with all the panelists, all the submissions that they made. As a matter of fact, we have to depart from the traditional ways of doing things. It has not helped us. And that, if you say that is a crunch time, I do agree. In that, if you create room for black market, then it will operate. Don't forget that the prices at the black market is higher than those of the bank. So if the bank is providing cheaper rates, but people still find it comfortable dealing with the black market, then you know that there's fundamental issues here. And let me tell you, most of even the bigger multinational companies and all that find it comfortable even to deal with this black market. So there's space for them to trade. And what has created this space? It is because of the traditional ways of doing things at the Bank of Ghana. The stringent requirement of documents. Sometimes it's not even convenient or comfortable dealing through the banks. Because instead of relaxing this documentation, because after all, what do you want to know? Evidence that you've imported. But they do it as if you are under scrutiny or as if you are under serious fraud office scrutiny or some sort. So it deters people from even doing business through the mainstream banks and all that. I think we have to relax on those things and then make sure that people are encouraged to do business through the banks so that they can have an idea of the actual volume of trading or importation that we do. As it were now, most of the figures that they bring as volumes of trading is speculative. They do not know because we are talking about the bulk going through this black market and all that. We use rules and regulations and laws to define these things. We use laws to make sure that forest is well arranged and then the demand of it, the supply and all that. But if you leave it so empty without any rules and regulations and all that, like I would say in the case of the investment laws, then the demand will always outweigh that of the supply because we leave some of our investment laws so loosely for people to have their way. So I think we have to use our investment laws to tighten because I agree that the major cause of our problem is excessive importation. Nobody can take it away from us. But I've also said that we know where this problem is. We have investment laws. And so if you want to deter excessive importation, then you use investment laws to drive potential investors to industrialization, to more productive areas, rather than encouraging them to the trading aspect or where it will increase dumping and all that. And we have the laws to do that. It's as simple as that. If we are not doing that, we cannot come out and blame anybody. We are included, we are traders and all that, and always the concentration is on us. When we talk about the forest, every Ghanaian will say that, oh, you people, you import too much. But we've said that we import, our part of importation is about 15%. The bulk of importation is done by the multinationals, and it's obvious. Go to Spinters and you see the articulators line up. When we go to Dubai, we see that we do consolidation for only 120-footer container. You see about 5 people buying just 1 container. So it cannot be said, and the blame they put on us, where we know where the actual problem is. Let's tighten.
So you feel, essentially, from what you're saying, you feel we're not hitting the nail on the head. We are not addressing the problem from its root.
Yes, we are not doing virtually nothing. So you see, we are talking even about the supply of the dollar. Yes, I've told you we've been getting balance of trade surplus. For the past 3 years, we've been getting the surplus. It means that export outweighs that of import, isn't it? Because of inclusion of oil and all that. And so if supply of the money, the supply of the forest is more, then what is instead of the cedi being strengthened, is getting depreciated. It means that the demand is far outstrip that of the supply that we've managed to get. And so you find out what is consuming this scarce resource that we've gotten. And that's where the Chinese malls who bring the bulk of dumping goods and all that and sell Ghanaians, about 30% of our customers have all gone to this one particular mall and buy all the goods, and yet they did not bring any equity investment or benchmark investment.
Let me just hold you on that point. So you use the word dumping, and then you talk about basically infiltration of other nationals. You've even spoken about the fact that it is a lot of these MNCs who are impacting the economy by way of the imports and everything else. But let me ask you, do you feel we don't have proper regulation when it comes to this? Because admittedly, we have Indians, Lebanese, Syrians now, Chinese, among others, who have taken key sectors of our economy. And it appears Ghanaians themselves, like you have been saying, are bleeding. Do you feel we don't have, or we're not implementing the right policies to ensure that Ghanaians benefit from the economic system?
Exactly. We are not doing exactly so. Because what we have done is that in our investment law, the requirement is that you bring in $1 million in kind of goods. Mostly they bring it in kind of goods and not even the lodgement of $1 million. So when the person brings goods in kind of goods, the person is finished. And presto, the doors are open for the person, whether it is a mega supermarket, whether it's a mega wholesale and all that. What the law should have gone ahead to say is that they will ask you, now, what capacity, what volume of trade are you coming to do? And how much is required? So then, if the person is bringing 500 containers for a year, because if I'm in Ghana, I will have to change the money and send it and buy these goods. But he hasn't gotten money in the first place in Ghana. And so he will bring the goods from China mainly. And then he bring the goods, about 500 containers, without bringing the actual money that you use to transfer. So if the person have to bring 500 containers, you ask him the value of these 500 containers, and then that amount is deposited at the Bank of Ghana. It's a requirement. So if the person bring it, then you use that money to import the goods that you want to import. Because he hasn't gotten money here in Ghana. So how can he change money to Ghana? It means that he is only dumping the goods because there's a floodgate open to him, a country that is so loose. And so you bring all the manufacturers will tell this company, we have these goods, we can't sell, send it to Ghana for us, and they bring it. No, that's not how to go. If you do that, then you are derailing the effort of your industrialization drive. So your industries, why is it that they keep on telling the local to patronize made in Ghana goods, and the same is not done for the mega supermarkets who also do retail like us? Why are they shy of doing that? Let me tell you, when it comes to supermarkets, then of course our investment law should also structure that, because we are doing retail, you have also to sell the made in Ghana goods. So your shelf line should also contain about 30% of what is made in Ghana. That is your investment law, and it's take or leave. So it should not be said that the person will come and open a big supermarket, very big across the country, and all the goods, when you go inside the shop, the supermarket, is from South Africa. About 70%, 80% from South Africa, others from other countries. What are you doing to your economy? You are destroying it. You are just promoting other. So those when they talk to us that we have to consume made in Ghana goods, they are talking to the wrong people. Because we have the shops. We, the locals, we have the shops. The manufacturing companies do not have the shops. So we buy all the local manufactured goods and sell. And then the shortfall of demand is what the locals also import again. Can the same thing be said for these multinationals? No. The multinationals do not go and buy from them.
Right.
And yet you think you are doing any good to anybody. So the investment law should be able to tighten and bring a lot more stringent measures that will require that if you come to trading, then you have to bring the benchmark investment, the money that you are going to use to bring the goods, you have to bring it before you bring the goods. Otherwise, where are you going to get the money to bring the goods? So you just be here, and then containers, thousands of containers just come without any visible investment because somebody just declared 1 million at the investment and got a certification to dump goods here. We have lost it. The same can be said on the juiciest areas of the economy that I've always been saying, that we have to make a conscious effort to invest in these areas by way of our investment laws, which will say that we do not give all this sector to a foreigner, and that is a foreigner have about 55% in this area. The rest can be shared as can be floated as shares or a deliberate government efforts to get money to invest, especially in the communications and all that. Let me tell you, if the euro bonds that we have gone for and all that, those billions that we collected, and we have used some of them to buy about 40% from most of these telcos. Is it not a productive and prudent investment that the country would have done? And that would have been able to retain some of the gains that these companies are getting. And this is exactly what I'm trying to say. Because other than that, we will just be dancing around the issues. And that's it. So
okay.
For the balance of trade surplus, we have it. But let me come to the inflation that we are getting now. Let me tell you, most of these things are cost-push inflation. It's accumulation of costs from where we buy our goods to Ghana itself, the effects of the Ukraine war, petrol, and all that. So this particular inflation is not as a result that more money is chasing fewer goods. No. So that a Bank of Ghana, if you want solution, you say that because I want to mop up asset liquidity, I'm increasing the policy rate so that more money will be mopped up from the system. No, we all know that there's no more money in the system. So that one also come and compound the situation, the cost. All the pillars that all indicators that give us the enabling environment to do trading have been affected. That's the interest rates that we pay have gone up from probably somewhere 20% to now about around 30%. It's so huge. And then we are talking about the inflationary figures. When there's inflation, it doesn't help us because, you know, this business that we do not do it in isolation. We do it with our customers, our teeming customers, the consuming public. And that's if the purchasing power of the consumer is affected. And in this case, the consumer's purchasing ability has been affected by over 30%. So he is limited. So if the person was able to buy goods with the same amount, about 10 of them, now the person will struggle to buy for a quantity of that same item. Means that it has affected your turnover. And businesses thrive on turnover. If you do not have this turnover, it means that you are unable to service your debt and service your supplier's credit. So then we are in confusion. So I heard Mark saying that it comes to this time that most of us are unable to even pass on the cost to this consumer that we cherish so much.
Right.
It's true. What Mark said is 100% true. But most people misconstrue us when prices go up naturally by accumulation of costs and say that traders are profiteering. They don't know what they are saying.
Okay. Just hold for me there. Just hold for me there, Dr. Obeng. A very passionate delivery. But before I come back into the studio to Mark Bedu Abwaje, let's cross over to my colleague, Samuel Kojo-Brace, who has also been interacting with some people. Here's what he has for us. Samuel, if you can hear me, do take it away. What are people saying, sharing with you on the back of the latest inflationary figures?
To find out from them how the inflation is impacting on their work and in their life. Chiefs, Chief Edzeng. Yes, also how to make a for you. How is inflation impacting on your job and your life?
Mostly people were patronizing our taxi. Nowadays, they have because of the fact of the increment of the fares and those things, they've gone to the truck drivers now have been conveying them to the ministries. So we are finding it very, very, very difficult in making our sales. And then the fuel too, the fuel price have gone up. It's causing a very serious problem to us.
So it means people are not boarding because the transport fares have gone up.
They are very high. Okay. That's why.
How about the home?
We can't afford buying. I can't afford about our daily meal.
Right. Thank you very much. Grateful. So let me get more viewpoints here. Chief, how are you?
I'm doing well.
Okay. So you're also a driver here.
Yes, I'm here.
The latest inflation means indicates that transport alone is over 44%. How is that impacting on your work?
You know, this our transport business we are doing, everything depends on the fuel. Without the fuel, there is no substitute. You don't use water to replace petrol or diesel. So it's only that you are going to buy. So when we come to work, here is the case. You see how we have parked here. Since morning I came here, it's only once I was able to go to ministries, which is 20 cities. So imagine, it's almost 9 o'clock now, or going to 9 o'clock. By the end of the day, maybe you buy fuel 150, which let's put in the old CD 1.5, which is 3 gallons at the moment, or more than even less than 3 gallons. And that 3 gallons will not even take you up to even 1 o'clock or 12 o'clock. You have to add up. But the income that you receive from the work will not even reach that 1.5. So at the end of the day, you are lost. Are you getting me? You are going to make sales. How much are you going to deposit? You eat. You see? So all this thing is affecting us. I know the situation or the whole world is suffering from so many things. But I always talk about my work. It's the work that I'm doing to survive. So if the petrol is very high, I cannot even buy, or I'll borrow money. Here is the case. At first they gave us a coupon you used to buy the fuel. And when they give you 50 cedis, I remember 2008 or something, it's 14.5 liter, that 50 cedis. Now that 50 cedis is just a gallon, which is about 5.3 or so liter, which will not even take you up to 11 or 2 hours. So it is affecting our work. The problem is the fuel system. You know that when fuel, gas, everything goes on, everything changes. You get to market, people say, oh, they are too more. They have increased it. You see, so we need to look at it. That if there is some substitute or some means to help the system, that it will help all of us.
People also say that food prices and other prices of other goods are up because of transport fares. How do you react to that?
Yeah, that is exactly what I said. A market woman goes to a market, maybe from Amasama to Accra here, the load costs about maybe 50 cedis. Now he goes there, he say 1.5. He's not going to carry it on his or her head. You have to bring it. So when you also bring it, you have to see the That come of the whole thing, how much am I going to make and get the capital? Otherwise, you will lose. So the fuel costs so many things in the country. That one there is automatic. No one cannot change it. It is true. So if they can look at it for us, at least.
Thank you very much. So he's made his point. Let me try and engage some more drivers. Let's talk to this man here to get his viewpoint. This is still the Citizen Microphone on the AM show on a Joy News channel. Chief, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
By His grace, I'm fine.
Great. Let's talk about inflation. How is inflation impacting on your work? Your colleagues say, well, it has made your work difficult. How do you see it?
Yeah, it's really so, because looking at it, the passengers are not boarding here because the inflation is having impact on them. Yeah, because now some people, they will board the car to some point, then they will alight, then they walk to their final destination because they don't have the money to complete the whole journey. Yeah, because now when you go to the market, people are complaining, prices have shoot up. Yesterday, for instance, a rice that I bought at 50, when I went back yesterday to get one, is now 55 within a couple of days. So you can see. Now, yesterday, the government statistician came out to say that now the rate of inflation is now 31 point something, almost 32%. So you can imagine how things are going. So the government management team, those who are in the helm of affairs, those who are handling the economy, they have to put things together.
The handlers of the economy must up their game. That's the word on the streets, especially from the taxi drivers. But let me come back into the studio. Mark Bedu-Abuaje, CEO, National Chamber of Commerce, is still here with us. So initially, you were talking about the inflationary rate and the fact that it must peak before we'll see some fall. Until it has peaked, and we cannot tell when it will peak. We heard the government statisticians say that let's not deceive ourselves into thinking too quickly that it has peaked just because we saw a 1.9% increment compared to the maybe 3 point something or 2 point something percent increments we saw in previous months. Now, how much further do you feel this can be stretched? I mean, how bad could it be? How far could it go? Because we have all the other components in there, including risk of debt distress and all of that. You follow the Bloomberg charts. And then when it comes to the cedi, do you think it could get worse? It could erode in terms of value even further? I mean, what do you see?
Well, I think that the policies that probably we started with, we are now seeing some positive effects. That is why the rate of growth is going down. But it doesn't mean that...
And we are talking what? Maybe February, March?
Yes.
And now we are in August.
Exactly.
After what? 4 or 5 months?
That is how inflation works. If you know the variables as well, you can look at where the inflation is coming from. If it's more of monetary issue, if it's more of the general understanding that more money are chasing fewer goods, then the monetary policy becomes more effective when you increase the policy rate. You can easily mop up because interest rate goes up and people are investing and you mop up money. But when it's supply side constraint, it lingers on for a long time because you can't just grow maize now and expect that the next day will have effect. So that is why we are seeing this slow growth. Means that it will take much longer time for us to address the supply side constraint. And most of these things may not even have control over them. Now look at imported inflation, which is 33.5 or so, which means that whatever we are importing, there is this component of inflation in it, which we don't have control over. It means that you may put in your policies, but we may not be able to resolve because Ukraine war is affecting almost everybody. Now, most of even the manufacturing companies in Ghana, they import their raw materials, which means that they are importing 33.5% of such inflation. The freight cost, even the duties, the levies at the port. Now, if you import one commodity, you are likely to pay no less than 17 different kinds of levies. All these feeds into the cost of the.
Is it high time we looked at some of those components, like the freight people, the traders have been calling for that look? Let's cut it down, or let's look at VAT. Let's take a second look at
exactly. That is why I'm asking for a collaborative action between the monetary and the fiscal policy. The fiscal policy looks at the taxes, levies at the port. That is where the Ministry of Finance, they have control over.
Right.
Now, if you go to Côte d'Ivoire, there are certain products that they have reduced the taxes of taking out the taxes. For instance, wheat, because they know the cost is up. So if you add up some of these things, you are likely importing more inflation. Why is it that we can't do a similar thing? Otherwise, we'll continuously be importing inflation. So let's look at some of these drastic measures and ensure that we stabilize our economy.
Staying quickly on that, I know you want to move on, but staying quickly on that, because now we are looking at remedial measures.
Yes.
There's also the bit about diesel, for example.
Yeah.
And you see the percentage increment, yeah. I believe over 100%. That is stark.
Yes.
It is steep. And you look at what we use diesel for, like I said, agricultural equipment,
exactly.
buses,
exactly.
generators, and others. It means we're in big trouble, because if you're thinking agricultural equipment, the farmer is going to be affected. When you're thinking, the buses and the rest, people in transport and those who bought
yes.
are going to be
yes.
impacted.
Exactly.
Generators, businesses are going to be impacted. So can we, for example, look at the taxes on fuel? Is this something we should take a second look at?
I think we should take a second look at it. I've heard other arguments that if we do that, it's going to affect the economy. I think the president
said on May Day that it would lose about $4 billion.
And I've also heard the Minister of Energy also saying similar things. They should explain it further to us. Because it's
You disagree?
No, to a large extent. If they should explain why they think that they cannot even do anything about it. We are not saying they should. If there is a bit, look, the reduction in fuel, just the small reduction, is having a bit of effect on some of the prices that we are having. Now, that's why the rate of growth is even down, because diesel for some time now has been stable.
Right.
It's going down. Fuel is also going down. So people are now looking at some of these dynamics. So let's look at it. You see, in situations like that, you need some drastic measure. We are not saying that reduce it. And of course, when even fuel at the world market is coming down, we find a way to put on other taxes to ensure that they rake in more revenue. What are they doing with the revenue? Do they have any reserve somewhere that in challenging times like this they can bring in just to support the business and the individual? So that is what I'm saying. In fact, we are likely, as the government statistician said, we may have a further increase in inflation. It may be the growth may be gradual in a reduced form, but it will come. I'm even doubting whether the 28.5 target for at the end of the year we'll be able to achieve. And for businesses,
you doubt we'd be able to meet the
yes,
about 28.5% target of inflation?
Yes, if you're not able to peak by September, it will be difficult to achieve.
So if we peak, let's say at the end or second half of September, or let's say early October, you feel it would still impact the inflationary rate at the end of the year?
It will be difficult. It is now that we are trying to resolve some of the supply side constraints. At that time, I mean, we are in rainy season, the food will be coming, so the food prices at least will go down. But what is feeding into the food price largely is not because we have shortage in some, it's because of the cost of transportation, which of course
will also impact
diesel and other things comes in.
Right.
So if foods are in abundance and we are still having diesel and petrol going up, you are likely to have some level of inflation.
And it's interesting because when you look at wheat, for example, and we know why, we don't produce it here.
Yes.
I mean, and Russia and Ukraine, the main wheat producers across the world, are in this war, as you would call it. The Russians would call it a special operation. So you look at all of that, and you look at the cost of bread. You see, it's gone up by over 50%.
Exactly.
So that paints a picture for you.
Yeah, but inflation is just an average. So you may have some being up, some being down. And then you find an average, even the regional level. So that's why people are saying that it's not reflecting what is there at the market. The exact product you are buying may be at the higher side or at the lower side, but they find the average and tell you that on average, this is how prices are
So let's just do this. Let me come to Dr. Joseph Obeng as we get ready to wrap the conversation. I'll give you gentlemen a minute and a half, maximum 2 minutes each. What should be the way forward? You've already mentioned some of them, but give us key points, bullet points, straight to the point. What should government be doing at this time to change the script that we have in terms of inflation? Dr. Obeng.
Yeah, we need a paradigm shift, complete paradigm shift of the way we do our things. To tell the truth, if you look at the inflation basket, we have the local aspect and then we have the imported. If you say that the imported one, there's a huge inflation on it because of what is happening in the world, then it's accepted. But when it comes to the local ones, it can never be accepted because we have to produce. When we produce, we have to add up value. And then when we value, we store. So when you store, you have abundance throughout the year. And so...
Which will drive prices down.
Your pricing is stabilized. So that if you are in a country that now we say that the yam is in abundance and we do not know and we do not research and we do not brainstorm how to process yam, make some chips, make some powder, make some this thing and can them, then we do not know what we are doing. Because whatever thing that we are consuming from other countries is because they research into it and then packed it, and then the excess is coming here. But we have it raw, and then when the goods come, we have to force ourselves, whether we are full or not, to consume it. And then it rots. Then the farmers lose their money, they don't have appetite to grow again. And then the next season, they didn't grow, and then the price have escalated. This is not record science. We have to add value. We have to research. We have to know that even in the value chain of cassava and all that, even the juice and the water that comes from the cassava is the starch and all that. Cocoa, the chaff of the cocoa, the peels and all that. Everything should be researched and we package and make production out of it. If you do not do that, then we continue to rely on others. Then this is a very personal thing. We have to add up. We have to. So I compare the economy of Ghana to that of a football match, where the midfield is broken. The midfield is broken. So we have the elementary sources, the primary sources that the farmers have produced, and then when it comes to the middle, where we have to pack it, bag it, and store it, we do not have it. And then we overpass the middle and then come to the consumer, eat it whether you like it or not, and then it perishes and there's no productivity in that thing. Let's do this as a conscious effort of a country. And then, because it should not be said that there's a war in Ukraine. The things that Ukrainians consume is very different from our mankani, cassava, plantain, and all other things that we consume here. Right. Let's not even tie up with it. It's a disgrace. Okay. It's not fair to Ghanaians. Let's add value. Let's research. Add so many things. People do not even know that we eat cassava leaves. When you go to Kenya and all that, it's a delicacy.
Liberia.
We have to research. And yes, we have to research and add it to our consumption. And then we'll have abundance for all of us.
Right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph Obeng, the president of GUTA, the Ghana Union of Traders Association. I'll give you a minute, Mark Bedu, to just re-echo some of the things you've said. What should the way forward be?
I agree with Dr. Obeng to a large extent that we need to change the structure of the economy. Otherwise, we'll come back to discuss these issues. But my last point is that looking at the way things are going, we should brace ourselves up for a higher increase in prices. And consumers...
We should brace ourselves for
an increase in prices.
An increase in prices, yes, of commodities.
Of commodities.
Whether imported or locally produced.
Exactly, because inflation is still with us. And businesses, we are not Father Christmas. We have to... In fact, if you still want to keep people in business, if you still want to have our businesses and you still want to contribute to tax, we should find a way to sustain business. And the only way out now is to ensure that if for not even a larger margin, there should be some increase in prices that we should expect in the next few months.
Thank you for joining us, Mark. Mark says the businesses are not Father Christmas. And so, obviously, if they are to stay afloat, they'll be passing on the cost to you, the consumer. Mark Bedu Abaje is Chief Executive Officer, Ghana National Chamber of Commerce. This has been our discussion on the inflationary rate. But we have a lot more coming your way as we get into other pertinent conversations. We'll be talking about the Ghana Water Company Limited and how 50% of its water is consumed, yet not paid for. Do stay.